It's a terrible form of abuse when whole families gang up on one person. Sometimes it's scapegoating, where they blame you for problems you never caused. Sometimes it's just plain bullying and cruelty, and of course it leaves terrible wounds, even when you know the abuse was about them, not about you, and even when you've worked hard to create a good life for yourself. You can end up feeling disconnected from people, unworthy. If this is you, I want you to let in that other people's abuse doesn't define you, and healing is possible. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Amelia, and she writes, "Dear crappy childhood fairy, I'm finding it so hard to connect with people. As a child, when I started thinking of myself and expressing opinions that were different from my mother when I was around 10 years old, she started to get really angry with me because I was outspoken." I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through and see what's happening for Amelia. All right, she says, sometimes she wouldn't talk to me for weeks in the house and would move away if I tried to kiss her because she'd say I was a traitor for not taking her side against other people. Whew. Only 3 weeks ago, she refused to talk to me because I was unwilling to badmouth someone with her. One of my sisters was with her and was extremely happy to see that. That sister has always been emotionally and sometimes physically abusive toward me. When I was 12, she started telling me no one would like me. Over the years, she progressed to telling me everyone, including men I date, would leave me, and that there's just something about me that people will find unlikable, and that people, wherever I work, are trying to get rid of me. The two of them did a great job of isolating me from people, raging at me whenever I had friends and telling me they only want to use me, and telling me I'm basically a fool for not leaving the friends I had. Well, now I have no friends at all, and while I do go to a couple groups on a weekly basis, I've experienced so much rejection I literally cannot bring myself to try to talk to people when I'm there. I completely shut down even though the people seem quite friendly. I don't date, though I'd like to. I struggle financially because I always get jobs paying far less than I could make. My sisters would get so angry when something good would happen to me, and now I feel like my life is this tiny little box where I watch the world being so alive without me. I tried a 12-step before, and it was not a good experience, so I left. Where do I start? How do I find the life I was robbed of, and now at age 56, I so desperately want? Okay, Amelia, I'm so sorry this happened to you. That's terrible. This is abuse. Your family abused you, and the fact that they ganged up on you, I don't know why that is, but it multiplies the negative impact. I think a kid or a young person, to a large degree, if one person is abusive, like the mother, and other people are okay, you have a little bit of a buffer on that. But when it was your mother and your sister and just total gaslighting about how worthless you are, that would be hard to resist. I'm really sorry. I'm sure that we could diagnose them with 7 different disorders for behaving this way. Among other things, they're sadistic. They seem to take pleasure in hurting you. So, I really hope you're not in contact with those people anymore. I am like the last person who's like, cut people out of your life, but these people need to be cut. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. So, it sounds like you have perspective that what they did was wrong and that you didn't deserve it. But also, you're very deep in this social isolation, like a social freeze here. And I'm so proud of you that you wrote to me, because you're saying that you shut down, that you almost cannot talk to people, and yet you shared your story with me and with everyone here. And what I would like everybody in the comments to do is, if you relate to Amelia in getting bullied like this and feeling shut down and stuck and cut off from connection with people in your life, would you please say something in the comments to her, something encouraging? I think it's really common. So we at least have the comfort of knowing, you're not crazy, Amelia, you're normal, you're having normal symptoms. You're having a normal reaction to something that really is abnormal to happen to kids and shouldn't have happened. But here we are. We're like the club of people who things that shouldn't have happened did happen, and we're learning how to heal anyway. So I think it's tremendously promising that you wrote such a clear-headed letter about what's going on. Here's what happened. Here's the behavior. So you'd like to date, but you don't. You go to a couple groups, but You've had so much rejection, you literally can't bring yourself to talk to other people when you're there. And, you know, it has, unfortunately, when you're walking around with a lot of fear that you're not good enough and that other people don't want you there, it has a way of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes like a vibe. People can sense it. And I don't know anything about how you present yourself, but often when people are feeling this rejected, they kind of wear it. They wear it in a drabness, a utilitarian appearance maybe, where instead of enjoying themselves and dressing in clothes that make them happy or make them feel attracted, they're sort of dressing for, you know, to get everybody's attention off. I don't know if that's you, but if it is, one of the first things that I suggest you do is that you go buy some clothes, even if it's at a thrift store. Personally, I think thrifting is one of the funnest things there is to do. And buying clothes that are colorful, that you maybe don't know yet if you feel good in them, but you're going to give them a try. It's only thrifting. If you can get a shirt for $8, you get a shirt for $8 and wear some color and wear something that fits you well and makes you feel better about your appearance. And so if you're like many people, you're 56, I'm a little bit older than you. I totally know that it's natural to not feel like we're pretty enough or good enough, and maybe you have that too because they certainly drilled it into you. But you know what? What is so freeing about getting kind of over 50, it's like, well, you know, it's kind of at this point, you're never going to look like an ingenue, so you get to look like yourself, and yourself gets to be colorful and expressive, and I really encourage you to do that, to start being yourself. Now, yes, this could suggest to other people that you're open for conversation. So I realize that might be a vulnerable place for you. That vulnerability of connecting with people and feeling triggered by them is an almost universal trigger for people who were traumatized as kids. And what we end up doing is avoiding them. And I just hear you, you're kind of in a deep avoidance here. But there's this pessimism here, and I want to try to press on it a little bit, where you say, I tried a 12-step before, and it wasn't a good experience, so I left. So I've been to like so many 12-step meetings, and some of them were just awful. Some of them were just awful, and the people bullied me or gossiped about me, and some of them were absolutely life-saving and wonderful. You know, you get what you pay for. But there's something so powerful about people who voluntarily get together to work on themselves. And your isolation and your history of being bullied by your family, you know, and sort of narcissistically abused, is you are not alone. And 12-step rooms are a place where, for virtually no money, it's free if you want it to be, you can contribute a little money if you care to when they pass the basket. But you get to be there and be with other people who totally understand what you're going through. And you don't have to say a word. You can go and just sit and listen for a while, and you can spend 6 months. When I first started going to 12-step, I was very talkative, and I had a lot of story to unpack, and I would cry every time I shared. And then I started feeling better, and then I started sponsoring other women, and I was a pillar of the community. And then when my first marriage busted up and I was bitter and felt like, what was all this for? Now my life is terrible. I have kids and no money, and it ended up being just fine. Just heads up, it was fine. But I got bitter and I abandoned my 12-step life, and I didn't go for a couple years. I wasn't using my daily practice techniques that I teach here. And I was just like, this is all BS. I'm going to just be like everybody else. And gradually, slowly, not quickly at first, but then it happens quickly, I sort of slid back into my old patterns, and soon my life was extremely messed up, and I was isolating, and I had to come back. And when I first went back to the Al-Anon meetings, for the first 6 months, I didn't believe in it. I didn't like anybody. I didn't feel safe, but I didn't really have a better idea for how to bring myself out of this terrible sort of inner lockdown that I was in, of just basically feeling like everyone hated me and I hated them. And, you know, like, you see me now, you kind of know, like, that's not really who I am, but that's what I'm like when my trauma is untreated. It gets pretty bad. So I want you to give it a try. I like 12-step. It doesn't have to be 12-step, but it is free and it's all over the place. And you certainly qualify for at least ACA, maybe Al-Anon, I don't know. Maybe CODA, or, you know, for anybody who has alcoholism or a problem with drugs or substances. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about the existence of these fellowships of people who are following a common program to recover that's got some good principles about how to be a good person and how to straighten out your life. Like, That was always what I needed. It was very helpful to me. And then, it's been more than that for me. More of my healing has come. When I discovered what complex PTSD is, my healing progressed quite a bit. And it was an outside issue there, so I didn't go back. I seldom go to meetings anymore. But I have very, very good opinion of the value of going. I went for 25 years. I sponsored 300 women. And then that sort of grew into Crappy Childhood Fairy, and it's a different thing. I never thought my life was going to get bigger. I really thought that the hard stuff that had happened and the way that I struggled with people was always going to be nothing but a liability and something that I would have to find a way to encase in cement so that it didn't infect everything in my life. But that hasn't been the case. It turns out I got to blossom into my real self. I'm still a person who had those experiences and who sometimes revisits that frame of mind. And that's part of who I am now. And that's actually part of why my YouTube channel is successful, is because it's real, because people recognize that we're connected, that we understand each other. And so I didn't expect that. I didn't have a framework to see that there was a place for me in this life where I got to be me. And how nice that there is. And there is for you too. And for you to find it, you'll have to come out of this pessimism, the pessimism that's protecting you from dealing with people. See, people are triggering, and if we don't have a way to calm our triggers and to cope with the neurological dysregulation that gets set off from being around people, if we don't have that, it's very tempting to treat it by isolating. You can make the dysregulation stop. It's just that it's very, very lonely. So I encourage you to keep going. And there's always therapy and groups and things like that, meetups. I don't know. See, I say that, but I don't think I would ever go to something like that. It has to be a little bit more targeted for me to feel good. So I encourage you to keep trying. You can be the kindest, most intelligent, most capable person in your entire family. But if you had a narcissistic parent, you are never safe from being scapegoated. The scapegoat role is super common in dysfunctional families. It's the person who gets blamed for the family being screwed up. It's the person who's blamed for causing all the conflicts, whether they did or they didn't. And this is done to them either directly with verbal attacks and straight up accusations, shutting a child out of the family, or through subtle put downs and jokes and neglect of who that person is, who that child is, what they need, how they might be suffering. But the problem doesn't end when you turn 18. I have a letter here today from a woman I'll call Ava, whose family has never treated her fairly, and it's affecting her very deeply now. And it says, "Hi Anna, I'm diving deep into all your videos and doing the daily practice. Thank you for helping me not to feel so alone in my lifelong struggle. Day by day, I have a glimmer of hope. So here's what happened. My father, when I was a kid, was coming and going between his girlfriend's house hundreds of miles away and our family in Southern California. Of course, he left right after I was born, and my whole life, it was a joke in the family that my father took one look at me and left. Ha ha, right? My mother resented me. Everything was perfect before you, she'd say, and my role in the family became the scapegoat. I had to grow up fast and became a people pleaser for survival. I was sexualized young. I had a stepfather who was an alcoholic who never worked, and my mother worked all the time to support everyone. She also went out a lot to escape. I was alone most of the time, so I learned to cope and figure things out. Fast forward to my mother dying some years ago. 6 months before she passed, she told me she was sorry that we never got along and that it was her fault because she didn't want to get along with me. This was actually a gift, says Ava, a confirmation that indeed I was not crazy and she truly didn't want to be nice to me or spend time with me. A second gift was her dying relatively young. I was 33, she was 59 when she died. So at least I was able to have some of my life without the head games, the blame, and all the shit talk she told others about me behind my back. Yeah, I thought, all these horrid feelings will end. Well, not so fast, Ava says. We all got through her passing, and there were the same family dynamics. My brothers hating each other, my sister as the golden one in charge, and me as the flaky youngest who had no voice. When it was just family together, it was painful but familiar.
Then came last Thanksgiving. I live in Europe now, and my boyfriend and his parents, who are also in Europe, came to the U.S. so that they could experience a real U.S. Thanksgiving. My brother offered to host rather than having it at my house. It sounded to me like a lot less work and would mean I'd have help with a big day, and anyway, my brother doesn't want to come to my house. He also let me know my sister was coming. Okay, great, I thought. But then the day came, and she was a perfect biatch to me, specifically, all day long. My boyfriend's family kept asking why she was being so mean to me, and did they do something to offend her? I had no explanation. To tell you the truth, I don't recall it being different than any other holiday with my sister and brother and sister-in-law. It was so painful to have outside witnesses. A month later, my sister called like everything was normal, and she was talking smack about my sister-in-law. Ugh, I just couldn't do it anymore. I disconnected. My brother had already disconnected from me because his wife doesn't like him being around me, or something. I can respect that he wants to keep his home life calm. Lots of examples of name-calling being cut off. All this went on, and now here we are. My sister wanted to reconnect last year. I told her I'm not interested in going backward into the same family dysfunction. I briefly tried to figure out how to fix this. I was being codependent all the way. And I researched family structure therapy and finally realized I was trying to fix something for her, like I always do when she gets into messes, without even knowing what she was trying to accomplish. I have another brother who has never really spoken to me. Even growing up in the same house, we were like strangers. My parents both came from effed up situations, so I understand this, and their parents came out of effed up situations too. So I see how it all happened. I've researched a lot about scapegoats, and they all say don't bother trying to reconnect. It's just more of the same treatment, and they will never see your side. I understand that too. I feel responsible. If I can give something, I do, but I also feel used by my sister. This is a pattern. When her life gets into shit, I become her very best friend, and then she calls me 3 times a day, etc., etc., etc. And then after she meets a new man, I'm dumped by the side of the road. My nieces and nephews are repeating the pattern, and of course I have been scapegoated to that generation too. I see all of it. I understand it in my head. I was in 12-step groups for 15 years. I was married twice, no kids. So the magic question is, scapegoats. Do I try to reconnect with my sister? And if so, do I try to explain about the name calling and the blame game? I hope this question might help others as well. I feel like you've given tools in a digestible format, action steps to take every day to reset my dysregulated brain and my broken little girl heart. Signed, Ava. Oh, Ava, this family has not been good to you. And I know a little bit about what this is like. I'm going to go through your letter a second time. Let's see if we can help you with this, okay? Your father was coming and going between his girlfriend in hundreds of miles away. Your mom did all the work, and it was a joke that your father took one look at you and left. Ha ha. All right. That is a terrible thing to tell kids. And only people who are really checked out think it's funny or think that kids are capable of getting a sophisticated joke like that. And obviously, there's an element of the joke that's not a joke because of the whole pattern of how people treated you, right? Okay, so then you say, my mother resented me. Everything was perfect before you. So you're the youngest, so there were all these kids, and then you came later, and everything was perfect before you came. And I can only imagine what her perceived trip about that was, as if you created yourself and then like landed in her life and she didn't have a baby and make that decision with this man she was with. And yeah, I think you've really accurately called this scapegoating. She had a terrible husband. She did all the work and supported everybody. And I'm sure it was very difficult for her, but it is no excuse at all for treating kids like that. You know, the word scapegoat, it's a very old word in our culture. It comes from the Bible, as you may know, and I think it's Leviticus. The Israelites conduct a ceremony in which they direct their sins onto a scapegoat. And then they set the goat free into the wilderness, and that metaphorically cleanses everybody from their sins, right? So that's what dysfunctional families do. They make a little kid into that goat that they send into the wilderness and put it all on you. It's like, there, it's all your fault, and we're great. And of course, they're not all great. They sound like a miserable bunch of people. So at least there's that. You know, sometimes I've heard it said that scapegoated kids can sometimes have a certain resilience. I'm not saying in any way this is something to be thankful for, but sometimes the people who get like turned into a golden child, the kids who get all the approval, they stick with the sick family. The scapegoats have a reason to try to get better, right? Or they have to face like how sick the family is, and they have to see it for what it is. And that makes them capable of having something different. And that's what I want you to have. So you had to grow up fast. You had to become a people pleaser for survival. Yes, you did. You were sexualized young. That's not right. And you had a stepfather who was an alcoholic who never worked, and your mother worked a lot. She also went out a lot to escape, and you were alone most of the time. So you learned how to cope and figure things out. Yeah. Okay. So fast forward to, you say your mother died some years ago, and I guess it's been a year. And 6 months before she passed, she told you that she was sorry that you never got along and that it was her fault. And I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so rare that people who are, you know, horrible, cruel parents come around and say that. But I spoke too soon, right? And she says it's her fault because she didn't actually want to get along with you. Oh, and I get you. That's actually a gift. You're like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not just sitting here feeling sorry for myself. I thought she was trying to like X me out of the family and she didn't like me. And there it is. She finally said it. So I totally get that. That's understandable. And I'm glad she said it. I'm actually glad she said it so you could have that clarity. You didn't just have to live it. You got some validation. You were mistreated. All right. The second gift was that she died relatively young. And now you have, I think you're 34 now, I'm calculating by this. And you have time to have a life without that crazy family stuff. So you thought when she died, everything would get better. I thought that too in my family. And it didn't. I got worse actually after that. And I was forced to face like everything that I had inherited and built up from that experience, from the trauma experience of being a kid, and also from being rejected and kind of blamed for things. I had some of that too. In my family, it was a rotating role that went to 3 of the 4 children. And even quite recently, it's been me. And I'm, old enough to realize it doesn't even actually have anything to do with me. But it does hurt. It never stops hurting. But I take it less personally now, and it less affects my identity, and it less affects the relationships I have. But that has been the path I've had to walk in healing, and I'm going to talk to you about walking that path too, so that starting with this day forward, you are not identified with your family's crazy, messed up opinion of you that's a projection of their own minds, okay? You didn't get respected, you didn't get seen, you didn't get recognized for who you are, what your needs are, what your talents are, what's so lovable about you. They didn't see that. And unfortunately, that causes grave harm to a kid. It causes brain changes. Now, the good news is you can heal your brain. You can't go back in time, but you can now start that developmental process that you were supposed to have back then. You can start it now. And when you start to that healing process now of getting your own validation and realizing your worth, like it doesn't have to come from your mother's died, she's not ever going to give it to you, but you're going to give it to you, and you can begin to seek out people who give it to you. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So you all got through all the siblings got through the death of your mom, but there were the same family dynamics. Your brothers hating each other, your sister being the golden one and totally in charge. and you are considered the flaky youngest who has no voice. All right. Well, you do have a voice. You have a voice right here. You're talking on YouTube to hundreds of thousands of people, and we hear you. We hear you. Okay. You are real here, and you deserve to be heard, and your feelings are real. Okay. So the regular family get-togethers were painful but familiar. But then came last Thanksgiving when I guess you're living in Europe now. I like that. I like that you're far away. That seems great. You have a boyfriend from the country you live in, and his parents came along. All four of you came over to spend Thanksgiving with your family. And I'm gonna circle that. Well, here, we're in the analysis. That sounds like something I would do a little earlier in my process, is just, kind of forget what the dynamic is, go into denial about how it always is, and try to, bring outsiders into it. Outsiders who are good, who respect me, who care about me, and then, feeling horrible that they got treated that way too. And that's what happened to you. And it just, you didn't do anything wrong. You're just doing what people, that would be natural to bring your boyfriend's family to your family to do this American Thanksgiving thing. And it's funny because so many Thanksgivings are like this, right? Really fraught with conflict and tension. So they got their American Thanksgiving, all right. But they served as a mirror for you to see, like, what is going on? Why is this woman so mean to you, your sister? And is it something they did? And that's what would hurt me, is that, like, they would take it personally too. So just so you know, they're not effed up like you, and they took it personally or wondered. So you are so normal. You are so okay. You're just doing what a human being does under these circumstances. We are wired to stay connected to our families. It takes a huge act of will to separate from that. And so hope springs eternal that it can be different next time. And I wouldn't abandon all hope. But I also wouldn't just assume, like, one more trip and it's all going to be different now. That's just it's not realistic. It's not what's happened for you. It's not what's happened for me. It's not what's happened for people out here. Occasionally it's different. And we'll talk about when you know. Then your brother offered to host rather than having it at your house. So your brother offers to host. He's also in this little bubble of, like, this is going to be different this time. Sure, let's have the guests, a whole bunch of guests into our family. So that was nice of him, but also in denial about how it really goes. So you thought, okay, it's a lot less work and you'd have some help. And anyway, your brother didn't want to come to your house, so you could go to his house to be together. I know that feeling, like you want to be with your family on holidays. I know. It's primal. It's primal. It's not because something's wrong with you. It's just that the intense need to be with your family is kind of clouding over the certain knowledge that you have that people are going to get weird. Okay. But then the day came and she was awful to you. Specifically, she was awful to you in particular all day long. So the parents heard this. And it was so painful. And a month later, your sister called, like, everything was normal, nothing happened. It was normal to her. She's been treating you this way for years. It's all totally normal. She's not somebody capable of being sensitive about how that might have played to your guests, to people whose good opinion you care about. Any family that was capable of caring about other people would care about you and your guests and everybody having a good experience. And in fact, they would care about you and your family reflecting well to your guests. They would want you to have a nice partner and a partner with a nice family who bothered to come all the way over, to visit your family. That's what they would want. So I'm just telling you, there's something seriously broken about the relatives who would try to make you look bad in front of them, and they don't even know it. It's like all normal. And then she's got some man problem, and she calls you and calls you. And then your boyfriend, he had already not your boyfriend, your brother had already disconnected from you because his wife doesn't like him being around you. I don't know what that's about. I suspect you don't know either. And that's how it is when you're the scapegoat. Sometimes you just sort of accept something like, I guess I'm just an unlikable person because these people don't want me around. But when it comes right down to it and you get enough healing and you ask yourself, or somebody really caring asks you, what is that about? And you're just like, I just have no idea. Well, if you've done a lot of work on yourself and introspection and you still have no idea, I'm going to suspect it's just pure scapegoating craziness. Okay? I don't know. He wants to keep the home life calm. So I don't know what the background on this is. So I'll just say one caveat is, if when you get together, you have a lot of personal drama about the way they treat you, that might cause people to consider you the problem. which is also scapegoating. But I would just say, if you have a role in that, the only thing I can kind of read between the lines is that maybe you say something about this. And that is who gets scapegoated, by the way, people who tell the truth, people whose very existence reminds the narcissists, and I think you have more than your mom doing the thing there with the narcissism, but people who call to their awareness that there's something wrong, people who remind them that they're not so great, they don't add to their glorious impression on the world. Also people who remind them of an unpleasant time, or who make them feel inadequate in any way, or who they feel competitive with. Like if you have some nice qualities and your sister doesn't have those particular qualities, that would be a reason that somebody would do it. It's a dysfunctional family thing, and as much as I am angry at your family on your behalf that they treat you this way, it's a really normal pathology for a dysfunctional family. And I know they were brought up by the same people you were, and so they have it too, and they might be also, in a weird way, like victims of the childhood trauma that they went through, but they haven't yet seen how much they're hurting other people. And you know, that is so much why it's so important to heal. It's not just so that we can feel better, it's so that we can stop hurting other people. Now, I'm not hearing anything in your letter that you're currently hurting other people. You're just getting scapegoated. And people who grow up scapegoated because they didn't get that validation, they didn't get seen, they can often grow up to have a very negative pattern, you know, as a consequence of that they feel so bad about themselves. And one of the big ways that they act out on this is by getting in relationships with uncaring and unkind and blamey people themselves. Because that's what we do, right? That's what we do. We can't really create a relationship out of something that we never had. So one of the things that you can do is start to have more. It's not going to be your family. I don't think they're the ones who are going to give this to you. But you can develop the kinds of good friendships, possibly a good partnership if you're there yet, where you begin to be seen and validated for who you are, and people love, appreciate, and admire who you are, and they can reflect that back to you so that you too can love, appreciate, and admire yourself. Now, if you've ever heard me talk about loving yourself, I feel like that is so much easier said than done. And people who didn't have CPTSD, they go like, what? You just need to love yourself, girl. Well, if you didn't get loved properly, like that's just like words, right? That's just words. And so one of the things that I recommend is that you can learn to cultivate love in your life by letting it start with you. You can start by loving other people. That saying of like, you can't love other people until you love yourself, I just haven't found that to be true. You can love other people. You can be loving to other people. You can definitely completely lose your boundaries and ruin your life over other people. But love is something that you're probably very capable of. It sounds like it. And you know why I can tell? Because you keep trying with your family. And that's a very loving and connected thing to do. That means something in you is intact, even though it's kind of like a little bird that keeps flying into a window. Like it looks like they should be able to get to something they see through that window that is somewhere they want to be. And they just keep hitting the glass. They just keep hitting the glass, and they just keep hitting the glass. And that's what's happening with you. You keep going back to the family like a little bird who sees something that you would like to have, but you can't have it. You can't have it with these people. Maybe one day you're going to have it. And how you're going to know that that's possible is they're going to approach you. And I would go with things that you've researched and say, just relax your pursuit of your relationship with them. It doesn't mean you have to let go forever. Just don't pursue it. Take all that beautiful, loving, constructive, connected energy that you have, that you've been trying to give to them and trying to bring things back together with them, and just bring it right here. Just turn it right around on yourself and use it to develop good friendships, possibly a partnership in your life right now. Bring your life into present time. These people who don't get you, the trouble with people who don't get you and put you down about their perception of you, which is totally how scapegoating works, is it's almost impossible to keep their opinion out of your own consciousness. And you getting better is the healing process. It includes a lot of steps, but one of them is to start changing that self-concept you have. And you can do that by like deciding to change it. You can do that by changing little habits that you have so that you start to have different experiences. You can start to by making a lot of small decisions about who you hang out with and who you don't hang out with. So that more and more of the times that you're around people, you are being appreciated, admired, accepted, seen, heard. These are very high priorities for your development. Nobody can really do this all by themselves. We do a lot of it for ourselves, but there's no substitute for other people and having the kind of relationship with a nice, mutual, loving, appreciative vibe between you. That's something, there's an aspect of that that only other people can give you. And every Thanksgiving that you are with this family of yours putting you down and because you know how you have to adapt to that when they're acting like that. I know this like the back of my hand. You have to adapt to it, right? So you make yourself very small. You start saying only things that you think that are not going to set them off. And then they get set off anyway. And then you hold it in and you hold it in and you hold it in. And then maybe something snappy comes out. And then they have the license to just go at you. Forget all that. That is like, you can't afford those conversations. And there will be a time when you can connect with your family if you want to on very careful terms when you have a little bit more strength built up. You're like a little tree, that's still, it can't really stand up all by itself. You need to just grow a little thicker, a little stronger through your own healing, through loving relationships with other people. And when you're a strong tree, you can go into that windy place with them and just like have your leaves blown around, but you're not going to fall down. You're not going to take it in. All right. It's not going to strip the bark off of you. All right. That's the pattern. That's the path. Get stronger. And then you can try again with boundaries. I have a video called Should You See Your Family? You could search that on my channel. Should You See Your Family? And it's about how to set like super strong boundaries that people don't even know you're doing. They don't even know, because you know what happens with narcissists is if you set boundaries on them, they use it as a reason to attack you. And that's one of the reasons why we avoid setting boundaries with narcissists, because we don't want to set them off further. We just think, I'll just put up with it for this one more cycle, this one more Thanksgiving, this one more little interaction, and I'll put up with it, and then I won't put up with it anymore. And I'll just take the hit because it's better than the conflict. But the longer you go like that, the more you risk getting stuck like that. So don't get stuck like this. This is them, all right? You are capable of more, or you wouldn't be writing here. And everybody who's listening, I want you to be aware that Ava, like everybody who writes a letter here, is writing courageously and vulnerably for everyone's benefit. They could just ask me privately, right? But they're allowing this to be asked publicly so that you can benefit. So with Ava or anybody who writes letters here, I'm just going to tell everybody, like, don't even think that this is an opportunity to criticize somebody or how they handle it. If anything, if you want to say something to Ava, give her some encouragement. Give the letter writers here encouragement. Give the people on this channel encouragement. We're here to help each other, all right? So take part in that. We're not going to do any attacking of other people here. When people do that, I just hide them or remove their comments. We don't have room for that. This is a healing place. And if you just go to a YouTube channel and you hear a letter from somebody, we don't know them well enough to criticize them. Anybody. We can't presume to know people that well. So, and anyway, who are we? Right. At the end, you said that you understand this in your head. You've been to 12-step groups for years, which is awesome. And the magic question is, should you try to reconnect? It sounds magic right now to you because of that desire for love, but there's no magic here. No, I would not try. Don't try. You said yourself she treats you badly, so don't try. She might approach you. Next time she gets dumped or something with some man, she's going to call you. And you don't have to talk to her, and you don't have to tell her, look, I'm not talking to you. You can say, oh, you know what? I've got this huge event coming up. Can I call you later, or another day after this thing has passed? I'll give you a call. And then just don't call. Don't even, when people are abusive like that, you don't owe them accuracy or anything. And if they're going to attack you and you need to get out of that attack, you just say whatever you need to get some space, to get them back here and not give them anywhere to attack you. And if they keep attacking you, then you block them. You just do. And you can. It is okay to do that. You'll almost never hear me recommending that. I think when people are trying to do their part to change a hurtful dynamic, when they're trying, it's a whole different category. And if she ever becomes that person, if she goes to a 12-step program and she comes to try to apologize or try to have a better relationship with you, then talk to her, right? But let her tell you if she's in that place, and don't settle for some half-assed tiny little, I think maybe I'm to blame. No. It needs to be like a real and wholehearted thing where she gets it and she's worked on it. And I'm sorry to say, I would estimate there's a 15% chance you'll ever hear that from her, but you don't know. But at least for now, how about for a year, 2 years, you just let go and let the family kind of drift where they will and find out how they communicate with you and what happens. Because one thing about scapegoats is their willingness to put up with more is the one thing that is part. It is their part in it. Showing up for more is a communication of low self-esteem, that thing that it triggers in us of trying to, come on, I'm, like me. It almost makes them like us less. So don't even give them that anymore. Don't give them anything. Let them come to you and see if they do. And take all that energy and see if you can find good friends to spend Thanksgiving with. Holidays are really important to me too.
Have you ever had the experience where you should do something, like get to work on time or put the laundry away or finish a creative project or just brush your teeth before bed, but you just couldn't do it? Everybody procrastinates sometimes, but for people who experienced abuse and neglect in childhood, procrastinating can take over your life. It can hold you back. It can make you depressed, that you're stuck day after day in the same old rut. It's kind of like a paralysis. So what is that? This is something that used to happen to me all the time. It was so demoralizing. And then I made it stop. And I wouldn't be here doing this YouTube channel and the courses and the live shows I do and the team of 7 people I have on my team. I would never have been able to grow this unless I had cracked, how to keep my productivity going strong. But when people ask me how I did it, most of them don't like the answer they get. So if you want to hear how I did it, I will tell you. Okay. So first, I had to develop a new understanding of what procrastination is, because the word is a bit of a euphemism. It's not just like, oh, I'm being lazy, haha. It ruins your life, actually, like a parasite that infects your will, and it sabotages your self-concept as someone whose life is important and deserves time and work. So I use the word paralysis because you find yourself unable to take positive action on your own behalf. And this can be in little day-to-day things like you browse the internet when you have to work, or in bigger things that affect more people in a profound way, like not getting around to mailing the utility bill and leaving the whole family without electricity. So that used to happen in the home where I grew up. Now you can procrastinate to the degree that you ruin your relationship, your career, your integrity, your finances, and your health. So that's not just being lazy, that's a kind of soul sickness. So why can't we act? Honestly, I think the biggest reason is that doing things, committing ourselves, spending energy, creating something out of nothing, the reason we put it off is because it's hard. And the difficulty of truly accomplishing something combines with a kind of exhaustion that goes along with trauma symptoms, depression, conflicts, emotional outbursts, a feeling of overwhelm. There's a feeling that life is already too hard and you can't take on anything more than what you have right in front of you so that you can survive. And it's not like there's nothing to that, but it's not a mindset that helps you solve the trauma problem. For example, one of the great joys of my life is publishing videos on YouTube, and I'm doing that work right this second as I record this.
I love publishing videos and then reading all the comments and discussions that people like you contribute. Making these videos is a joy. It's also how my family earns an income. But you know what? The days when I'm supposed to be planning and researching and scripting those videos, it's like torture. And I'm craving to just go lie down and not do the work. Because the whole process, it takes days of preparation, probably about 6 to 8 hours of focused creative work goes into every video I make. And it's a little less when I share older videos or read a letter, though reading all the letters I get and choosing a few that I'll answer in videos each week, that takes hours too. And hearing about so many people suffering can take a toll on my emotions too. But the hardest part is just getting started. When it's time to really lay out what the videos for the week are going to be about and actually make them, I suddenly just get, so interested in my plants and getting that crud out of the little aluminum track at the bottom of sliding windows. That's what I was doing yesterday. And oh, look, people what are they saying on Twitter? And it makes no sense because window crud and Twitter make me feel bad about myself. And releasing these videos makes me feel good. But doing the work that leads up to that moment of taping is hard. I just had to get straight with myself. It makes me happy to set my intention and stick to my intention. This is what integrity is. It's accomplishment. It's the way I fulfill my personal mission to help other people who have childhood PTSD to recover. And I'm proud of my work. I also see flaws in my work, but being engaged in trying, just creating, sharing, serving people in the world, it is what keeps me going and makes my life good. Procrastinating is an attempt to solve the problem of stress. And stress is a problem. And it can seem like if I could just procrastinate a little while, I'll get all this energy and focus, as if, procrastinating is like a battery charging or like a defibrillator. The things that they do this and they put it on somebody's chest if their heart stops and they go charged and then you leap into action. Except that's not how it works. There's a time to rest and care for yourself, but blowing off the work you need to do is not the same thing. It doesn't de-stress you, it causes stress. For people with childhood PTSD, especially when there's a lot of unhealed stuff, you're in a state of stress pretty much all the time, so everything is hard. And that's the vicious circle. Stress makes things hard, so you avoid tasks, which makes you more stress, which prompts you to avoid tasks even more, and so on. People who don't have childhood PTSD have no idea how much work it is for some of us to do ordinary things. It's exhausting, it's stressful, just being in the world sometimes, right? People are hard. Going out of the house is hard. Sticking to a schedule is hard. Expressing yourself is hard. Hearing other people's opinions when you disagree with them is hard. Making money is hard. But you know what's harder? Not doing all these things. And that's why when you feel overwhelmed and stressed, the solution isn't always to give yourself permission to procrastinate. Sometimes the best way to calm stress is to take the chaos of your unfinished tasks from the heap of to-do items and forgotten emails and unfinished projects and just get to work on them. So you might want to stop thinking about stress and overwhelm and stop telling yourself that the solution is to avoid everything that's stressful for you. Because in the end, the path of least resistance is to do these things anyway. And that's the thing that most people do not want to hear. But that's how life gets easier, when we make order out of chaos. It feels good. It feels inspiring. It makes you happier. So how do you get started? Maybe you know the feeling of just getting the urge, running out there with the intention to do it all, right? This is such a childhood PTSD thing, to go from, I can't do anything, to I have to do everything. And there are times when that makes sense, but there's a time when it's just wishful thinking that you'll be able to tackle your entire list in a single day. Now, I don't want to discourage all that positive problem solving, but what can happen is you make a list of 20 things, you start on the first 3 all at the same time, and then you get overwhelmed and you fall back into procrastination. So taking action at a healthy pace is like a muscle. You can start to work it out slowly, just a little at a time at first, and that's a good way to get strong.
So whether you do a little at a time or go on a cleaning binge, I'll tell you what the solution is not. The solution is not to give up on yourself. Don't identify with the trauma and mistake paralysis and giving up for self-care. Don't go to Instagram and read all the posts from people who speak tenderly about how broken they are. They can do that if they want to, but you are focusing on your strengths and your vision and your commitment to not let yourself down. When you let yourself down, your worst behaviors will start to appear. And when you fall short of your own goals, you know what your CPTSD wants to do? It wants to find someone to blame. In fact, if you start having random thoughts about how people are against you, or you're going over and over and over some harm done to you in the past, ask yourself, is there something I'm avoiding right now? Am I actually angry at myself for not following through on what I need to be doing? And by the way, if you're not sure if complex PTSD is driving some of your self-defeating actions, you can take a quiz I developed. It's right down in the description section near the top. There's a link to the free tools page of my website. You'll find all my quizzes there and my free course. So most people don't want to hear this, but the solution for procrastination lies in action. But that's action taken in right proportion to your capacity. Now, when you've been deep in procrastination and avoiding your life, don't wait until it feels right to get started. If you've been skipping brushing your teeth at night, just take that one step and do it, even when you're tired, just for practice, just to get a tiny experience of integrity around intention and follow through. And then the next day, do the laundry. If you're still feeling good, you can reply to emails that people wrote you weeks ago, but you never answered. You can schedule a haircut. You can pop into the gym that you pay for, but you never visit. You can review your credit card bill for all the monthly subscriptions you forgot were still draining your finances, for things you never use. So you could throw out the moldy takeout container and the yellow broccoli in your fridge, which is something I need to do today, and sweep the front steps, also something I need to do today. So you know the good actions you need to be taking next. You may have to push yourself, not like a maniac, but some every day. You know that saying you hear sometimes? It's like, don't be a human doing, be a human being. Well, it's a good sentiment, but doing and being are both really important. And doing is how we earn a living, and it's how we express ourselves. I mean, how are you going to become fully yourself if you don't do things? It's not just the thing you get done, it's the momentum you build. The more you take action, the easier it becomes, and the more natural it feels to keep taking action. I procrastinated for years on the idea for Crappy Childhood Fairy, and it was in my mind for 2 decades before I had the inner power to do it, and I'm so glad I did. The thing that launched me into action was I finally signed up for a seminar about how to share your own life story as a way to teach others, and I wanted to do it, but I was terrified to do it. What if I got judged? What if my work was bad? What if I was successful and then committed to always working hard? That was the big fear, and you know what? My fear has come true. My work as the fairy can be hard. It's, a full-time job plus a lot of work on nights and weekends sometimes. But finally in my life, I'm actually bringing to the world what I have to give. And I never really felt like that in all the previous incarnations of my work. I was getting paychecks, but I felt like my life was passing me by and I wasn't being me. This that I'm doing now, this is so who I am and it feels great. So do you relate to this? The reason I encourage you to do the work and the learning to do what you're really meant to do and to go toward what you're capable of becoming is because I believe it's the only thing that really makes a person happy. It's what gives you that feeling that it was a worthwhile day and you can go to bed with peace and know that you spent your day well. And it doesn't have to be this giant accomplishment every day. I mean, that's not realistic. For me, the things that make me feel like I really live today are connecting with my family and friends in a loving way, a little each day, and being outside and walking every day, and then doing work that I know is genuinely making a difference in other people's lives. So I used to feel envious of people who build roads. I always thought, oh gosh, they get to go home at night and say to themselves, I helped build 100 feet of highway today. And then they know they did an honest day's work that helps people. Well, I didn't have that fully until I started doing what I do now. I didn't know how to start, but then I started. When I slapped down, it was $2,000 for that seminar. And that was just to get in the door for 4 days. And I had to stay at a hotel, kind of expensive, and eat in restaurants the whole time and get to the city where it was held. And I'd never spent so much money on this kind of thing in my life. And you know what? I got stomach flu on the afternoon of the third day, and I missed that part of the day and the whole fourth day. But the point is, I got started. And that was the day that the feeling that life was passing me by ended. And I stopped feeling like I had wasted my time and my talents, and all the advantages I've had in life of like, I have food, I have a roof over my head, I'm reasonably healthy, I have an education, like all of that. I just knew it was meant for something more. So I felt like I owed it to the world to give it back and to give my best. And so I launched Crappy Childhood Fairy as a blog, and immediately, that failure feeling just went away. I started to feel good. And it was on the side. I had this other, I was doing other work at the time. I was doing this in the evenings, but it grew. And being the Crappy Childhood Fairy, it is a lot of work, and emotionally it's hard sometimes, and the work, can really pile up, but it's never as hard as my life used to be when I knew that I could create this channel, but I didn't make the effort. That is why it felt like life was passing me by, because it was. Every day, for me, for you, time is ticking, and the world is just waiting for you to step up and take your true place in it. The world needs you. And you can do that by taking action. You can start with just one action. You can do it today. Small, consistent actions are the most effective. They're sustainable. You can keep adding to them. They have little spaces between each step when you can catch your breath and get your equilibrium again. And if you keep going, this series of small actions leads to massive change. But they give you a little breather between small actions. By keeping them small, you get to equilibrate between actions you take. Because if you have CPTSD, it can be a little rough sometimes. So you come back to center and then keep going. So if you have spent years of your life constrained from letting your light shine, your spirit is going to love this. You're getting somewhere. Accomplishment feels good. Now, when you finally act, does success always follow? No, not always. But what does follow is vibrance. You're alive and having the adventure of your life. And you may or may not reach the goal. You may not even want the goal in the end. But the act of taking small steps each day and trying will open your life up to all kinds of unexpected connections and possibilities. You are in the game, and you know it. You're open for business. Your strength is action. When we talk about childhood trauma, it's pretty much assumed that it was the parents who harmed you. What we don't talk about as much is how often the abuser is a sibling, or there's an abusive dynamic among siblings that took root in a household where the parents neglected or abused the kids, sometimes singling out one child as the scapegoat and poisoning the whole family. Sometimes the problems go on for decades. What do you do in the aftermath of sibling abuse? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Genie, and she writes, "Hi, Anna. My letter is about a sibling of mine. I notice siblings are not discussed too much as a source of trauma, and this is profound, I think," she says. "I've got my fairy pencil back. The one that I lost on the plane is gone forever, but I got another one. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let me just read through Jeannie's letter and we'll see what's going on and see if I can help." So she says, "I'm the oldest of 3 girls. My mother had me when she was 19 and she was unwed in 1959. So this was a gigantic shame that she, as being emotionally immature and very unwell emotionally, put on me." She says, "Probably at a minimum, a narcissist, and possibly worse than that. I was told at an aunt's house by my grandmother that my dad, Jack, was not my dad. My mom would refuse to tell me anything about my biological dad. The topic was not allowed to be discussed at all in the household.
When I was 18 months old, my mom married a man we called Jack, and my mom and Jack had 2 girls, Mary and Catherine, 3 and 4 years younger than me. The girls were treated completely different from me. They had clothes. I had 1 pair of pants. They had shoes. I didn't. As we got older, this continued. For example, my sister got a car and I didn't. I remember one time we were all going shopping for school clothes, and when I picked out something, my mother said, "No, you aren't getting any," and I was told to sit on the stairs at the department store while she bought clothes for my sisters. I remember going back home and looking at the 1 pair of pants hanging in my closet. Interestingly, this just made me determined to buy my own clothes one day, and I've done that in a very good career. My middle sister, Mary, in hindsight, was always mean. For example, she would walk by me and yank on my hair really hard in the back and then scream and cry and say that I had hurt her. One day I came home from school. She got home earlier than I did, and all the items from my bed were thrown in the street. She ruined my makeup. On and on, but you get the picture. And my mom did nothing about this, but instead blamed me when something went wrong because I was the oldest. My stepdad, Jack, was an alcoholic and was not home very much. My mom was really frustrated with him and used to load all of us 3 girls into the car, drive us down to the bar, send me in the bar to get him out. I would go to the bar, sit there and drink a cup of coffee, and he would not even acknowledge me, and he would not come out of the bar. I don't remember interacting with him at all. I don't think we even had a conversation. He killed himself when I was 11, and my sisters were about 7 and 6. Then we moved. I graduated from high school, went to college, moved away, and went to law school. About 20 years ago, I had some health problems that scared me, and so I came back home. Big mistake. My mother was her same awful self, and I did a family cutoff 4 years ago. Very, very glad I did that. Same with my middle sister. What a witch she still is. But my youngest sister, Catherine, I think she's what is called the lost child. She was very quiet. We got along really well when we were at home as kids. I remember being at school, she in grade school and me in junior high, and I protected her. She never did anything mean to me, nor I to her. From the chaos of our house, we were all just trying to survive. When I went to college and then moved, I tried to maintain contact, but no one would come to the state where I lived, so I would always fly here, rent a car, and drive to her house. She had 2 girls, divorced, remarried, and had a son. She was in a long-term marriage. She was a stay-at-home mom. When I came back here for good, I tried and tried and tried to visit her, and I called her, and she would not call back. And I would ask my mom, "Where is Catherine? Why won't she call back? Is this her right number? Where does she live now? Why isn't she included?" And my mom would just shrug and roll her eyes in that infuriating way she has of not answering questions. I can think of at least 2 times at family gatherings, like birthday parties, I would try to talk to my sister, but it was like she did not want to talk to me. I couldn't understand it. I still don't understand it. About a month ago, I had a phone message blocked because I don't take calls from my sister Mary that my youngest sister had died at age 58 from sudden cardiac arrest. I've not spoken to my younger sister for years. All of this just feels so surreal, and I think it's all just very sad. It seems that no matter what, from the chaos of the dysfunctional mother, you cannot turn it around and reestablish some kind of relationship with an adult sibling. Now I just feel kind of strange about it. I really don't know my sister. I haven't spoken to her in almost a decade. I just find this whole thing very odd and would appreciate your comments. Thank you. Oh gosh, Genie, I'm really sorry. This is so sad. You're amazing, by the way. So it's interesting. I relate to a lot of aspects of your story, so I'll give you my take on it, but let's see what you told me. Okay, so you were born when your mom was 19, and she wasn't married, and she felt ashamed, and she was emotionally immature, and she put nasty emotions on you. Sounds like she kind of blamed you. You said she's probably at minimum a narcissist, and probably worse than that. And I don't know what you mean. I'm guessing like psychopath or something. I was told at an aunt's house by your grandmother that your dad wasn't your dad, and your mom refused to tell you anything about it. That's so sad and hard. The topic was not allowed to be discussed at all. And when you were 18 months old, your mom married a man and had 2 more girls who were much younger than you, and they got treated differently. You know, I'm really sorry about that. That is almost inevitable when one parent comes into a marriage with an existing kid and then has more kids. It's almost inevitable that the new kids will be treated differently, but it sounds like your mom really rubbed it in. And so they got clothes. You had minimalist clothes, like Cinderella. You remind me of Cinderella. They had shoes, you didn't. As you got older, it continued. They got a car, you didn't. And so what I love about this is that you decided to succeed in life and be able to buy your own clothes, and now you have this good career. Very good. You know, it sounds like as the oldest daughter who was scapegoated, that's what we're talking about here. You're scapegoated, which families with narcissistic parents do that. Lots of dysfunctional families do that. I don't know why. It's like human nature to just sort of single a person out and act as if they are the problem, when it's so clear from what happened with your parents that they really brought their own problems to the family. And that's so unfair, and I'm so sorry they did that to you. I mean, how as a kid, it sounds like you knew, like you recognized all along that it wasn't fair, that's not who you were, but how are you not going to be affected by that, right? And your sister threw your stuff in the street. That's interesting. My mother had a sister who was who I think may have been a narcissist. There were a lot of problems there. You know, I never saw her mental health records or anything, but there were many problems, a lot of abuse of her own kids. And she would tear up my mother's things and throw her stuff in the street. She ruined your makeup. Yeah, wow, that is a vicious and kind of a typical narcissist thing to do. It's true. And your mother didn't do anything about it, but blamed you because you're the oldest. So, gosh, nobody had your back. Wow. And then your stepdad was a drunk and not home very much, and your mom was frustrated about it. And, you know, not to excuse your mom's abuse of you, but living with him must have been hell for her and totally scary, especially back then when it would have been pretty difficult for a woman to be financially secure enough to leave a horrible person like that. And then he would just stay out drinking, and your mom would use you as a surrogate to go into the bar. Like, why you? Why not her? Was it some pride thing or something? That's just a classically sick, narcissistic parent, alcoholic dynamic of sending a kid into the bar to go get the drunk dad. And then he died. He took his own life. How horrible. And you sort of mentioned this just in passing, so I'm guessing that it was a relief or it didn't affect you very deeply, but I'm sure it was devastating on the whole dynamic of the family. But then you graduated, you went to college, you moved away, you became a lawyer. Awesome. That's a nice, tough job. I mean, like tough, like strong, right? And then you went home because of health problems, because maybe it'll be different now. That's what families are for, right? You know, when you need some help, go back to them. But you figured that out pretty quick, like no. And you cut off contact with your mom and your sister. But there's this youngest sister, and you called her the lost child in a family that has, this is the dynamic, as you know, but there's a scapegoat, that's you. And there's the golden child, and perhaps that was Mary, and the one that they can do no wrong in the eyes of the parents. And then there's the lost child who everybody just ignores, and they're quiet and they don't make trouble, and everybody goes, oh, they're just so nice. What a good kid. They never gave me any trouble. So that was that sister. We had all those roles in my family too. And my family has lost most of the people in it, but it's healing. And I would say that for a very long time, I did have a little turn as a golden child, but then not. Then I was the scapegoat. And now I feel like what's left of my family is healing, and nobody has to play these dumb roles anymore. And it's pretty cool, which is a miracle I didn't expect. But most of my life, it's been some weird thing. So you and your little sister got along well, and you never hurt each other, and you protected her, but she's not talking to you. Ouch. And this thing you described where you kept asking your mom, like, what happened? Where is she? Why isn't she calling me back? And your mom just nodded. I think what you're saying here is that it sounds like she knew that your sister's not speaking to you, and she knew why. And it's like their little secret. And that's awful that they ganged up on you like that. You tried to reach out to her a lot of times, and you tried to talk to her, and and she just wouldn't call you back. So this is what I'm guessing. I don't know what her relationship to the rest of the family was exactly, but she grew up in the same crazy dynamic. You know, her dad took his own life. She would have had a lot of trauma around that alone, let alone all the dynamics of everybody and all the trouble. But she was able to get married and have some kids, and I don't know if her family if that was like healthy, if she got a good thing going on. But I'll tell you what, when I got away from my family, there was a long period where I got very anxious when anybody made contact with me, only because they were connected to all that crazy stuff. And yeah, I was aware that some people were more trouble than others, but I needed to form my own identity away from it. I needed to be me and not be defined by it. And also there was a way that if you let one family member into your life, like it could let the other ones in who were trouble. And it was really a pattern that I'd be like making progress in my life, and then some member of the family who was really troubled would sort of make contact again, and it would have this way of like infecting my life with trouble. And I did not want any more trouble. I created my own trouble plenty, but I'm just wondering if that's what it is, if it's like she just needed to distance herself from all of it. Or, I don't know, maybe you did something, and I don't know if there's any way to find out. Maybe her husband or kids know something. Maybe that's worth pursuing. Maybe it's not. I don't think necessarily knowing these things is important, but if it troubles you, you might want to find out, like, what was that about, if you can. So then you found out that she died. And 58, that's like younger than me. That's terrible. From sudden cardiac arrest. And sadly, there's been a lot of that lately. I've not spoken to her for years. And yeah, it feels awful. You know, so you sound a little bit in shock. And I shouldn't be surprised, Genie, if right now you're just kind of like, whoa, she's gone. I didn't get to see her. But that a wave of emotion comes for you later when you're ready. You know, when there's space for it for you. And I think if you've had to cope with the pain of being scapegoated by your family, you know, your one sister was a witch, one wouldn't speak to you anymore, gave you the silent treatment, your mom and all her accusations and crap. And that's everybody, right? That's everybody. I'm so sorry that happened. And I think that it's good you got away. I think that's a job well done. You did try to reach your sister, so I'm sure she knew that you tried. So I hope that gives you peace. And emotions may come up like waves a little bit. Grief comes in waves sometimes. Also, as you recover from CPTSD, this is definitely like the case. I use my daily practice techniques, and over time, sometimes, this whole portal of awareness opens up. I don't really have blocked memories, but suddenly I can see things in a new light, or I can feel very palpably, where somebody was coming from around something that happened 40 years ago, where all the people have died. And that means a lot to me. I value that. So I hope you have some kind of evolution of those relationships through your increased awareness from healing from trauma. Now that your family's not in your life at all, healing is inevitable. Well, maybe not inevitable, but it is with you because you're working on it here. The fact that you write in, I know you're working on it. And I wish you well. And those of us who have had to separate from family members, stand together with you and send you love and best wishes.